And welcome back. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to announce the outcome of discussions by the Government of National Unity on the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, or BELA. And this was revealed by Deputy President Paul Mashatile during his address at the SACP's 5th Special National Congress that was held in the east of Johannesburg on Friday. Ramaphosa signed the act into law in September, but delayed the implementation of 2 clauses, 4 and 5, by 3 months to allow for further parliamentary discussions. Meanwhile, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, has threatened legal action if the 2 controversial clauses of the BELA Act are not signed into law. Now, to discuss this matter, we are joined virtually by the DA Federal Council Chairperson, Helen Zille. And tomorrow, of course, we will bring SATU into the conversation for their part. But today it is Ms. Zille with us. Ms. Zille, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
It's good to be with you. Thank you very much.
So how would you say the discussions?
I can see it's you. I'm battling to see, but I see it's you.
Yes, it is me. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. So just in terms of the discussions around the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, the BELA Act in the clearinghouse, how has that gone?
I think it's gone constructively. I think everyone was doing their best to find a win-win solution. And I think there are win-win solutions on the table. We're really working very hard to make the conflict resolution mechanisms of the GNU work, because it's essential that they work if the GNU is to succeed. We're obviously not going to agree with everything the ANC wants or does, or ANC policy. After all, we opposed them in the election, and they can't govern without us now. And so what we have to do is also service our voters in the Government of National Unity, and we have to find a win-win situation for everybody.
So when it comes to the BELA Act, perhaps this is an opportunity to explain in very simple terms why the DA is objecting to clauses 4 and 5.
Well, we're objecting to clauses 4 and 5 because they are not necessary. We had clauses 5 and 6 of the South African Schools Act, which was a good act, or which were completely sufficient. I wouldn't say the South African Schools Act is any more a good act. It was when it was first enacted in 1996. I don't think it's a great act anymore, but certainly clauses 5 and 6 of the South African Schools Act covered all the bases. And those clauses have been interpreted through the courts. So those clauses have been to court a number of times, and the courts have interpreted those clauses, so there's no confusion anymore about what they mean. They mean to establish a good partnership between governing bodies and schools and parents and the broader community. And that basically is what it's supposed to do, establish a partnership. And what clauses 4 and 5 of BELA does is do away with 5 and 6 of the South African Schools Act and gives all power to the head of department, which is not right.
So just in explaining that, does it actually take away the power of the schools, or does it simply say, okay, it has to be referred to the provincial head, and at that point, what happens? Is the provincial head able to override decisions that have been taken by the school through the governing body? Please explain to us again there what the consternation is for the DA.
Yes, indeed. The new clauses of the BELA Act say that in the final instance, the head of department decides. So all the other stuff that you do beforehand, the consultation, is all a box-ticking exercise. In the end, the head of department has the final say and can override everybody else.
So if we were to assume that everything is done in a rational way, starting from the school, and decisions are taken rationally at the school level, and these decisions are then communicated to the provincial department, surely there shouldn't be any problems, should there, Ms. Zille?
Well, we're not dealing with rationality here. We've heard from what MEC Chilwani has said, we've heard from what Premier Lesofie has said repeatedly, that this is a revenge project against Afrikaans. It's a major revenge project against Afrikaans, and that is what they're doing. And we have to believe that they will do what they say they will do. Mr. Chilwani says that there's no need for a single Afrikaans-speaking school in Gauteng, meaning that he will close them all down and make sure that his head of department has the final say to prevent any Afrikaans medium school existing anymore in Gauteng. And Panyaza Lesofie says he's continuing the 1976 uprising to do away with Afrikaans, which is completely ahistorical because there is absolutely no historical precedent for this 1976 uprising to have anything to do with stopping Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Black children, quite understandably and rightly, did not want to be taught through the medium of Afrikaans, but they did not want to get rid of Afrikaans as a language of instruction. And now many Afrikaans parents and children do not want to be taught through the medium of English. And according to the Constitution, having mother tongue education is a right where it is practicable. And in fact, in the Afrikaans community, in the deaf community, it's highly practicable. And what we need to be working on and what SATU needs to be working on is to make it accessible and practicable for all the other languages as well, rather than just fighting a revenge project against Afrikaans.
So, I cannot speak in any way, shape or form for what is alleged to have been said by the MEC for Education in Gauteng or the Premier for that matter. But as per the Act, Ms. Zille, where does the Act make provision for such? Where does the Act actually empower anybody to get rid of Afrikaans?
Well, it does, because it basically says that the head of department has the final say on language policy and that they can force a change of language policy at a school.
But what would that mean practically? And this is what I've been battling to understand. So are we saying that, let's say, for example, SABC High, if this is a school. So if this school, the language policy at the school is Afrikaans, my understanding was that it would simply mean that there would be provision for English classes to exist, even though the school would predominantly be an Afrikaans medium school. Is that not what it intends to do?
Well, intention and what happens are two entirely different things. So we've seen that at schools where there has been parallel medium streams, the school has very quickly become only English. Same thing at universities. Stellenbosch used to be an Afrikaans-speaking university in a majority Afrikaans-speaking province, with a majority of Afrikaans speakers who are not white. And Stellenbosch also said they were going to get a parallel medium program going, English and Afrikaans. Well, of course, now it's only English. Exactly the same thing at the University of the Free State, exactly the same thing at the University of Pretoria. Basically, it's used as a means of eradicating Afrikaans.
And see, Ms. Zille, I don't understand that, because surely that same act then empowers Afrikaans-speaking parents to ensure that there is a space for their children in the same school.
The point is that it becomes unbelievably difficult on the subsidy available to run a parallel medium school with everything in two languages and double sets of teachers and stuff. It doesn't work. It's never worked anywhere. Obviously, anybody who speaks Afrikaans, whatever their race, whatever their color, they are most warmly welcome in those schools. This has nothing to do with race. As I said, the majority of Afrikaans-speaking people are not white in South Africa. So the bottom line is this: are we going to protect the right to mother tongue education, to defend language and culture of endangered groups? Are we going to do that for isiZulu? Are we going to do that for isiXhosa? Are we going to do that for Sesotho, Setswana, all of those languages? And I think we should. That's what the Constitution requires us to do. There are 95 English medium schools for every one Afrikaans medium school. And their numbers are falling very fast because of a dual medium policy that eventually and very soon eradicates Afrikaans.
But the reality
and when the MEC says we want to eradicate Afrikaans, you better believe him.
But Ms. Zille, we have had dual medium schools exist for the longest time. I went to school during the apartheid years, and even then there were dual medium schools where even though the majority of the children were Afrikaans home language, there were 1 or 2 English medium classes that were well, catered for, and it worked perfectly. So to say that, there is no such successful model, I would like to question that, because I think it has been done, it has been successfully done, and even today.
It is successfully done if Afrikaans can remain the majority language. 9 times out of 10, it can't. So I went to a dual medium school as well, a dual medium primary school, very poor school. It was built out of corrugated iron. We had bucket toilets. Most of the kids didn't have shoes. I was lucky enough to have shoes. A very, very poor school in the platteland of Gauteng at the time. And that worked well because it was 90% Afrikaans, I would say. But there was never a risk that there would be a demand for 90% English. And that is the problem. The language gets eradicated, especially if you look at the wording of the Act and what has to happen there. But above all, you've got to listen to what Panyaza Lesufi says and to what Chilwani says.
No, but
If they
Mazilla,
say this is to get rid of Afrikaans, you better believe them.
No, but they don't speak for all of South Africa. And as I say, I cannot even corroborate, what was said by either of them. But to the point of eradicating Afrikaans, surely that is not possible. There are too many Afrikaans-speaking people in this country, the majority of whom are not even white South Africans. So surely there will be enough protection for the language in the country.
Well, if you stop teaching a language and if it stops being a language of education, it quickly unravels.
But how is it going to stop? Because I'm looking at a situation whereby, for example, you live in an area where the school is an Afrikaans medium school. And you're saying, well, yes, this is an Afrikaans medium school, but there are in this very same area a number of English-speaking children. Can't we accommodate the English children in a class in this predominantly Afrikaans-speaking school? Is that not what the Act is intending to do?
No, not at all. If you look at the definitions in the Act, they say that it has to conform to the language of people in the education district. Now, the education district is huge. It's massive. And there won't be an education district anywhere in South Africa, except perhaps in the Northern Cape, where the majority of people speak Afrikaans.
So how then, to date, have Afrikaans medium schools managed to exist and remain Afrikaans first language?
Because the laws allowed them to.
But the same law will still apply, won't it?
No, it's being amended in such a way as to not allow it.
But if that argument then, Ms. Zille, could be made for any language in South Africa. You mentioned earlier, isiZulu, isiXhosa, whatever other language, the same argument can then be made.
Yes.
And surely that is not what is envisaged for the country.
It is. If you read the Constitution, Section 29, for example, go and read it.
The Constitution?
Yes. If people want mother tongue education, it has to be provided where it is practicable to do so. Now, Afrikaans speakers have made huge advances in turning Afrikaans into an academic language from the lowest levels of pre-primary right up till postdoctoral levels. And they've made all that effort and written dictionaries and done whatever. The deaf community has also done a fantastic amount of work to make South African Sign Language a language of instruction. And I take my hat off to the deaf community because they have said this is our mother tongue. We want education in our mother tongue, and we're going to make the effort to have it. And they first had to have a battle to make sure that their mother tongue was recognized as an official language of South Africa. And I fully support that. Look what they've done. They've really done an enormous amount of work. Now, for every one Afrikaans-speaking school, there are 95 English-speaking schools. So in any education district, anyone, except perhaps in the Northern Cape where almost everybody speaks Afrikaans, the number of English-speaking schools will far outnumber the Afrikaans-speaking schools. And it's not too much to say that having built those up through the Afrikaans-speaking community, they should be allowed to keep Afrikaans mother tongue education. And then we can really focus on what we're supposed to be focusing on, which is not destroying the Afrikaans medium schools, but building up mother tongue in other languages too.
All right, and you know, I think that is a question that will be debated for the longest time in terms of what you say, destroying the Afrikaans medium schools, because I'm not sure what that means, you know, what that implies in terms of
what that implies is they stop being Afrikaans medium. That's what it implies.
So if
That's all it implies.
So Ms. Zille, is this not about South Africa making sure that all children are able to access schools in their communities, regardless of which language they speak? Because we have 12 official languages in this country, and every child speaking any of those languages should be accommodated.
Yes, absolutely. But for every place there's an Afrikaans school, there'll be an English school as well.
Yes, but if the English school is 20 kilometers away, why can't provision be made for those children in what is an Afrikaans medium school?
I think provision should be made for them in Afrikaans. Absolutely. Remember that whole outcry in Schweizer many years ago? There they made provision for Afrikaans-speaking children. I think they said Tswana-speaking. They made provision for Afrikaans-speaking children, for Tswana-speaking children in the Afrikaans school, but they had to learn to integrate and be part of the Afrikaans school, and then they retain Afrikaans.
So exactly that. Where Afrikaans-speaking children need to be accommodated in predominantly English-speaking schools, that should happen as well.
Yes, indeed.
So we're not disagreeing on that score. And again, as I say,
if anybody in the education feeder zone wants to attend school in Afrikaans, they must be allowed to.
Absolutely. But Ms. Zille, we are out of time. I quickly want to ask you. So
yeah,
this act has, of course, sparked heated discussion among the GNU members as well. So what would be the implication to the GNU should there be a failure to reach consensus on this particular matter?
Well, we'll have to wait for the president. I don't want to leapfrog the process. The president will have to look at the report, which is very detailed and very thorough. And then the president will have to take a step that is rational in law, and we will help make sure that he does.
And if the step he takes is not rational in law, according to what you view that to be, are you taking this to court?
Well, it's not what we view it to be, it's what our lawyers view it to be. And we may take it to court, we may take more drastic action, but I don't want to leapfrog the process, as I said. I don't want to leapfrog the process and run ahead of what the president is likely to say.
We are out of time. Ms. Helen Zille, thanks so much. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Helen Zille is the DA's Federal Council Chairperson, speaking to us about the implementation of the Basic Education Law Amendment Act. That's the BELA Act. And let us know your thoughts on that. We'll continue with this discussion tomorrow. We'll bring SATU on board to hear their views on it as well.